Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe weekly podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. Our podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, baby, I want to know, if you'll be my girl. It's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all of the details over at the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Today, we are continuing our look at the G.I. Joe Disavowed era, the Devils Poo run, and talking specifically about G.I. Joe Frontline issues 11 to 14, history repeating from Devils Poo in 2003. So without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. Learning lessons from history, it's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
And doomed to repeat himself, it's G.I.J. Jay Cordray.
Howdy, Joe fans.
Good to have you guys on. We're not going to chit-chat too much, because we've got somebody waiting on the line, ready to be introduced. And for our look at history repeating, it's none other than the writer of the arc, Brandon Jerwa. All of this has happened before, and it will happen again. Brandon is a writer, narrative designer, musician, radio DJ, monkey stripper, bicycle-based superhero, October Guard impersonator, and so much more. He resides in Seattle, Washington, and is best known for his work on comic tie-ins for several prominent licensed properties, including Battlestar Galactica, Highlander, and Army of Darkness, as well as other comic projects such as the original graphic novel Shooters for Vertigo. But most importantly for us today, he was the writer on G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe's issue 23 to 43, Snake Eyes Declassified, Master and Apprentice, and its sequel, Master and Apprentice 2, and most importantly, the issues being talked about today, G.I. Joe Frontline, issues 11 to 14. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you very much. That's the best introduction I've ever had.
We're now going to do the worst introduction you've ever had. Mark has prepared a much shorter, less flattering, and mostly inaccurate introduction. Mark, cue that up.
Okay. Okay, so what I am going to do, Brandon, is send across via the magic of Facebook Messenger a link to YouTube with your very own jingle, which I believe you were the first ever guest to specifically request that they are given a jingle. So, and not only that, you asked for the best ever one. So we'll see how I did.
Who is this man? Who is this legend? Who is this myth? Who is Brandon Joe?
Comic writer, bourgeoisie, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Funko Pop manatee, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Come on, Brandon, you can do it. Pave the way, put your back into it. Tell us why, show us how. Look at you where you come from, look at you now. Hammer, Casey, and Blaylock amateurs can go suck a cock. Write those books, dig a ditch. Come on, Brandon, get 'em. Have you ever seen a stripping gorilla? Have you ever seen, have you ever seen, have you ever seen Sprocket Man, the hero? Morning radio DJ, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Stalker of Dan Jolly, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Come on, Brandon, you can do it. There can only be one, and you can prove it. Tell us why, show us how. It's happened before, it'll happen again. Wraith and Chuckles and Red Shadows, created in polyphonic prose. Write those books, sing a song, type a viper, get 'em. Have you ever seen, have you ever seen, have you ever seen
It's the 12-inch. It's just it's the extended version. It's amazing.
And there we go.
Wow. The Pet Shop Boys just dropped dead for the express purpose of spinning in their graves, and now they've been brought back to life. This is amazing. This is it. I'm just gonna be on the show all the time now. This is just what I do now.
Brandon, when you get off of here, you need to tell all your other writer friends to come on Talking Joe and get that special Talking Joe treatment. You can't beat that. You can't beat that.
I don't want them to get treatment this special. They deserve half at best. No way.
Brandon, Mark has promised Jay and I that for each of your return engagements, he's going to create a wholly original and much longer
Mark's like, no.
jingle. I believe Mark has already laid down tracks for a 6-minute version for your second episode and a 25-minute jingle for your third appearance.
This is fantastic. This is everything I ever
Grateful
dreamed
Dead remix.
This is why people get into writing comics.
Apologies to the birth of my child, but this is, now I have a new high. This is great. This is fantastic.
Thank you. So where to go from here?
Delivering the goods.
I'm good. This has been great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We should talk about G.I. Joe and comics and Brandon. What's that comic that question we always start with for guests?
What's your G.I. Joe secret origin? So where, talk us through about the first time you encountered G.I. Joe. Where was it? When was it? What was it?
I know exactly where it was. It was at a Kmart in Manhattan, Kansas, which is where I was born and grew up. And we were always in the toy department. I was an only child and spoiled rotten. As a result, so anytime we went to Kmart or Walmart or whatever, there was always a trip to the toy department, and usually it resulted in a Star Wars figure, right? And in this case, I walked and I saw an end cap, and on the end cap there wasn't much, but it was a G.I. Joe display, and there was Flash was there, Snake Eyes was there. I don't think there were any Cobras. And there may have been one or two other random Joes, but I went with Flash. Because laser rifle trooper, he's got pads and a cool helmet and a sweet laser rifle. And so I got that figure, and that was it. I was literally obsessed from that first moment. And I remember very quickly after getting, I got the Jump, and I got Snake Eyes, and eventually found my way to a Cobra, and then just sort of one by one, all of my allowance and all of my fun money, Star Wars stopped existing almost, and G.I. Joe was it. And then not too much longer after that came G.I. Joe #1, that giant comic, and I got that at an Alco in Junction City, Kansas. I have very, very visceral memories of all of this. So yeah, that's exactly where it was, and I was hooked from moment one.
When you say that giant comic, you mean the double-sized first issue or the oversized edition?
Oh, the oversized, the
Treasury.
Yes.
Okay, and then you watch the cartoon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I already love the comics and the toys, and so the cartoon was a little, cartoony to me. And I still watched it. I still showed up every day for it. But I knew that I preferred the comics and the toys, and it was easy to distinguish that there was a difference in the lore there, even on a subtle level. Also, I should note that, Manhattan, Kansas and Junction City, Kansas, the thing that's between them is Fort Riley, Kansas, home of the 1st Infantry Division. So I grew up around a military base. And so I saw soldiers all the time. They were a part of our daily lives. My dad was a car dealer, and my mom worked in a bank. So I saw people, in green everywhere I went. So to have that aspiration of the military, was just kind of baked in because it was all around me. So of course it was cool to think about being a soldier, because it was just, part of life.
How long did you stick with the comic, the cartoon, the toys?
Let's see. I stuck with the comic until the Transformers showed up. Sorry, Tim. Later, when it was actually, they were actually integrated into the stories, I was out by then, because I just, moved to focusing on girls, honestly, and just being a teenager. The cartoon I watched through the end of the original run. I've never seen much of the second cartoon, the Deke. Was it Deke?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen much of that cartoon ever. And then the toys, I was still kind of buying the toys till I was 17 or so. It had tapered off a bit. I definitely was sort of picking and choosing. So that would have been around the time of we were getting
1990.
Yeah, probably. And it was easy to sort of get out once it started being Street Fighter and Star Brigade and that kind of stuff. So that kind of actually helped me steer away from it. And then I was off the habit entirely until the Toys R Us toys came out. And I couldn't buy those fast enough.
Were you reading other comics, other monthlies?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had there was a little comic shop. Later in my teen years, there was a comic shop. Where I lived in Kansas, we were an hour and a half from any comic shop. I was reading G.I. Joe. I was reading X-Men. I had a subscription to Marvel Team Up and the Avengers. I was reading some DC books. I was a pretty active comic reader. But G.I. Joe was always first.
And I guess some of the the narrative around you jumping on to the G.I. Joe book as the writer was kind of fanboy done good kind of thing, but which is a little bit sort of undermining in terms of the effort that's involved in doing all that stuff. Were you into writing also as a child? Writing a script for G.I. Joe wouldn't have been the first time you picked up a pen and put it onto a piece of paper.
No, I really, when I was a kid, I wrote and drew my own comics. I can't draw, but when you're a kid, you're the greatest artist on the face of the earth. But I would literally draw out multi-panel pages for hours on end when I was, as young as 6 or 7. I was a real lazy student in school, but I always did well in writing classes. My writing teachers, who I am still in contact with, told me that I was a writer from a very early age, and I don't remember that being a big feature of my life, but I guess that all makes sense, So in high school, if I could be bothered to turn in a paper, I usually wrote a really good paper, and I definitely wrote some short stories and stuff, but I didn't I don't know what it was that made me say, I should definitely be a writer. I just kind of decided one day, and that's literally how I ended up with this gig. But I didn't even know what a comic script looked like. I had to go download one from Dark Horse because I just really wanted to write a G.I. Joe script and submit it. So I just had to figure out what it looked like.
Okay, I think now is probably a good time for us to have some true or false questions in the form of Devil's Due or Devil's Poo.
Devil's true, or poo is all I want to know right now.
True, 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 or poo, poo, poo. Let's find out the answers right now. Devil's Dew being true, Devil's Poo being false. Brandon, have you prepared some questions for us to muse?
I believe I have. And here's my problem is you've done, the jingle alone tells me that you've done so much research.
Only Mark. Only Mark.
Oh, well, thank God.
Yeah.
The rest of you are so unprepared.
I am
Okay,
completely
good.
ignorant. I don't know anything.
I'll stay silent if I know the answers from knowing facts.
People might be surprised how yes, we're allowed when we have a noodly fact or a bit of trivia from G.I. Joe to yell into the microphone, and when we're quiet, it's because we don't remember something. So I think Jay and I think we do just enough research to fake this podcast.
As a former podcaster who did just enough research to fake his way through it every week, I salute you. Did I once talk about a movie for 30 minutes that I'd never seen? I sure did. Because I can read fast. Okay, so are you ready? Are you ready for your first one?
Yes.
Hit us with
This
that.
one's probably very easy. Because of G.I. Joe, I ended up on a game show.
Huh.
I'm gonna say true.
There's such a history of comics personalities. There's the Rob Liefeld
commercial.
Spike Lee, Levi's 501 jeans commercial, and
Oh my God,
is
yes.
it I forget? Is it Dennis Cohen? Another artist in that same year did an ad for Doers.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Whiskey. So I'm gonna say, and by 2002, there's some internet. I'm gonna say true.
Okay.
I know the answer to this one, so I'll let you take it away.
The answer is true. I ended up on a game show called I've Got a Secret on the Game Show Network, which was a reboot of a classic 50s or 60s game show. And the contestants all have a secret that a panel must guess by asking yes or no questions. My secret was that I had been made into a G.I. Joe figure, Dragonsky, and they guessed it.
Oh wow!
How long after the figure? How long after you were writing for Joe was that?
It was a little bit into my run as the regular writer, and the figure had just come out. Like it was a matter of timing. And when I got to the studio, they actually had more figures than I did. Hasbro sent me one, and they sent them like 6, and I was very jealous. Also, they were posed in very unflattering poses all over the production office of this game show. But yeah, they figured out my secret. They blew my cover.
Do you have this episode recorded onto VHS or like an MP4 on your hard drive?
It's in storage. I'm going to be digging it up very soon. I have the entire episode on a CD, on a DVD.
Okay.
A CD. What am I talking about? I actually contacted the show and requested one, and they sent me one.
Cool.
Yeah, it was all right.
Well, for our second episode, we'll do a live watch party. Talking Joe watches I've Got a Secret
along
with Brandon Jerwa, and for people who haven't listened to this episode, we'll see if our viewers and listeners can guess the secret.
Nice, very nice. Okay, fact number 2. In my very first story arc, I was made to replace a G.I. Joe character because Devils Poo thought my pick was too obscure.
This is a tough one. Jay, sorry?
Yeah, I'm jumping in with true. I mean, that's my guess.
What
do you think, Tim?
I think this is completely likely. I feel like this is a red herring because the last one was true, and I feel like if we change some words in this question, it's true. But I'm gonna say this one is Devil's false.
Say it, Tim.
Poo,
say the
poo.
word.
Devil's false, Brandon.
I'll say it. Poo, poo. Yes.
And
later in the story arc, Flint shows up. Flint is supposed to be Bullhorn, but I was told that nobody knew who Bullhorn was.
Yeah, they were right.
But
Well, listen, no argument here. Okay, come on.
isn't Bullhorn a hostage negotiator? He'd fit right in with this story.
It was literally a scene of hostage negotiation.
Yeah.
So yes, I thought so too.
Yeah.
But they wanted Flint.
All right. So Jay's got 2 points, and I've got 1.
All right, and then finally, this is about Snake Eyes Declassified. Is there an entire issue of Snake Eyes Declassified that the world never saw?
So tantalizing. Wow. Yes, there is.
Yeah,
But this is a guess.
likely
I have no research or information. Jay?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a little, again, too oddly specific.
I'm gonna say something like someone drew an entire issue and then they were unable to keep going with the series, and so that issue was redrawn by someone else, like Secret Wars 2 issue number 1, which was penciled in its entirety and then redrawn by Herb Trimpe, who did the whole series.
Good fact.
Side note, I love Secret Wars 2. The Beyonder doesn't know how to go to the bathroom is a very compelling plot point. I really... It's
the details that matter.
The answer... Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to guess?
I was going to say, I think it's true because I've been researching this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, it is true, but it was not drawn. It was written by me, and Hasbro was not keen to have a very sort of fatalistic young boy running around upset at the world because of death and pain and questioning God. And they also, Snake Eyes was supposed to have a real name. I created a real name for Snake Eyes because I was told I could, and then we didn't end up using it.
Are you able to reveal what that name would have been?
Here's the thing. I can. There's no reason I can't, but you understand that no matter what I say, it's underwhelming, right?
Will it be as good as James Hewlett?
No.
I'm going to go...
Yes,
Bob
no,
Light
it's
myself.
better.
That's what Larry kind of always...
Larry knew someone in Vietnam named Bob Light, and he's talked a little bit about this in interviews. Yeah. Snake Eyes is sort of based on him, but he's also said, that may not have been his name because everyone had nicknames. I'm going to suggest, really for ratings, just to get our audience to keep coming back, that we hold on to this for a future episode if we have Mr. Jerwa back, and also so that the three of us can think good and hard if we really want to know this. But mostly for the ratings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to know.
Oh, Tim.
I would urge you to do what I did. I literally looked at Snake Eyes with his mask off in every way, shape, and form that I could until my brain said, this man's name is this.
Bruce Wayne.
Oh, so close. It's Wayne Bruce. You were so close. Pooh. His name is Pooh.
His name is actually Devils Poo.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's save that for another time.
Sorry, Jay.
Man.
Party pooper.
No, it's a delayed gratification.
That's right. That's right.
But gratification's best.
We're talking to Brandon Jerwa live on our podcast. There's so much gratification in that.
Oh boy.
Mark is queuing up a 47-minute jingle for the end of the episode right now.
Okay, now so we were talking about Snake Eyes Declassified. Let's not go down a too big let's not go down a too big a rabbit hole, because I'm sure you could talk for 30 minutes without even have watching this. But do you have any kind of quick thoughts on the Snake Eyes movie? I'm assuming that you've seen it, and kind of what was your reaction to it?
I still haven't seen it.
Wow.
It doesn't look good to me. And I'll watch it at home, but I feel like I've been burned twice. And especially at a time when going to a theater is a risky proposition. Although I can literally rent it at any time. I know that now. But yeah, I haven't seen it, and I don't know. A lot of people went to go see it, and some people said, "Oh, it's good," and other people were like, "Yeah, it's interesting." And so that was. I mean, have you all watched it? Did you like it?
My one sentence review is I liked it, but it's bad.
Fair.
I liked it when I was when I was in the theater, but there were parts in it that were like really made me sick to my stomach when they happened, and kind of ruined it. And it's like, yeah. So on reflection, I give it the worst of the three. I won't watch it again.
Okay. Okay.
It's quite a fun film in places, but you kind of have to leave your G.I. Joe fandom at the front door. Just take it for what it is.
Okay.
Be my take.
Yeah, no, I get it. And look, I never know who I'm going to start a fight with, but I do have to say that, like, you know, I cannot get behind all these people who are upset about, you know, changing his race or anything like that. Like, no. I'm for it all the way. Like, that doesn't disrupt the character of Snake Eyes for me, and I feel like I have a tiny bit of authority to be able to say that. But, like, you know, everybody has to take these things as they come, but like it or don't like it for the right reasons. Racial swaps of characters is, I don't know. I have trouble with people having trouble with that, I guess.
Well, his face doesn't matter. It's the fact that he's a bad guy in his own movie that really spoils it.
Yeah, let's not spoil the plot too much for Brandon, but yeah, it's kind of, yeah. I don't think any of us had an issue with that really. It's more the plot, I think, that has a few bumpy bits.
I do have to ask from the ads: is there a magic rock in that movie?
There is,
or something.
Yes, there is.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good to know.
And snakes and fireflies.
My one sentence reply: there is a magic rock in that movie. Let's talk about Frontline.
Yep,
right.
Let's do it.
Cool,
a much better G.I. Joe story.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Did you literally just say your thing is better than a thing I just said I don't like? That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I said much better. That means something, doesn't it?
Yes, it sure does.
Yeah. So at what point did you start to write what would become your Frontline script? Yeah. What point in the Devil's Due history was that?
Oh, this was they had just put out issue 3 of G.I. Joe, I think. Zartan on the cover. I want to say that's 3 or 4. And I had been buying the book at my local shop. I lived in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I'd been a radio DJ, but I was a displaced professional because radio was dying. So I was able to get paid unemployment, but choose a different profession. So I decided that I was going to become a comic book writer. You know, like you just decide that one day. So around the time of that G.I. Joe book, I'm like, you know what? G.I. Joe was my guiding light all through my youth. There's nothing I know better and nothing I have more feelings about than this. So if I'm going to try this, let's, go with what you know. So I wrote a 2-part script, the scripts for what would become 11 and 12. And I also wrote a superhero script at the same time for an original superhero because the world sure needs more of those. And so I sent that to Dark Horse, and I sent a letter to Devil's Due at the behest of my then wife, who was like a paralegal and a very professional person. And she said, you know what, if you want to try this, approach it like a job. Literally send them, a letter of inquiry, dear sir or madam, I would love to submit my script for your consideration. And I did exactly that. I did not send the script. I just sent the letter, and they wrote me back fairly quickly, like within, I want to say, a couple of weeks. And they said, sure, go ahead and send your script. So I sent my 2 scripts, which I think took me, I'm going to say they probably took me 4 months to write, maybe. But I was unemployed and had a lot of time to do it. So I sent these 2 scripts off, and they replied, fairly quickly again. And they're like, hey, we want to use these in a new anthology series. And so they said it's going to be like 2 or 3 months before you hear from us again. But we'll be in touch. And I was like, oh my God, this is, great.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Since Devils Do was so progressive in terms of having a website and fan interaction, I'm curious, was that letter of inquiry a piece of paper in the mail or an electronic mail?
It was both. I sent an email version and a physical version, and they responded to the email version. God, I had to think about that, but yeah, I do remember actually sending off a physical copy.
And if I'm remembering correctly as well, you, before even starting as a writer on the book proper, you were quite active on the Devil's Due forums. Am I remembering that you were Typer Viper on the forums?
Oh no, I wasn't Typer Viper.
Were you not? Okay.
Wait. I remember that name. I don't
you?
think it was me. No, I don't think I was. Oh God, I remember that name though, and now I'm genuinely not sure. I'm not trying to be evasive. I legitimately can't remember.
Somewhere out there, Typer Viper's going, that was me.
Yeah, apologies to the
him.
real Typer Viper. You're getting your jingle next week.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think it was Brandon.
Okay. Listen, it may have totally been. I was definitely on the forums. I legit can't remember my name. It's funny, I was trying to think of like what my name was on toy forums long before I was on, the G.I. Joe site, and I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember.
So for those of us who were not there, Brandon, can you paint a picture of how often did you log in? What were the kinds that you were asking questions? When did you start going to the Devils Do forum?
I guess it must have been right around the time, probably after those first 5 or 6 issues, I would assume. Once I had made contact with Devils Do, maybe. This is freaking me out because I have such little recall of that, and do you already know these answers, Mark? Do you know?
Well, I think it's all been sort of assigned to the sort of old internet bin of history. I don't know if we can get back to these things, but I have a fairly strong recollection of you being on those forums and posting some questions about, you sort of saying I'm trying to write a script.
Wow.
And does anyone know how long it would take to get on a plane and fly across from this, from this place to this place?
Oh,
and it
my
kind of
God.
registered in my brain because a few months later, then you announced on the book. And it's that was that guy that was on the forum and asking questions about writing his script.
That's
Oh my
amazing
God,
right
wow.
there.
Okay.
Even before he wrote that script, he's asking questions that Hollywood writers now don't ever think about. It's like, oh, you can get from one side of LA to the other in 15 minutes. I don't think so.
Wow. No, this is, this is very exciting. I feel very old and weird now, but this is starting to come back to me. And no, I've always been a big asker of questions. I'm a firm believer, if you're going to write something, anything, and you don't know, don't make it up because you will 100% be wrong every time.
And you'll get called on it.
Provably. Right. Now, clearly, I didn't know how to use the internet in a way that might get me that answer without having to go to a forum and ask other people. But yeah, wow. Now that you're saying this, it is sort of coming back to me. And Devils Do really was ahead of the curve with fan interaction. And that was really great for me. Obviously, it was very helpful in becoming a part of that community. And getting the support of a lot of people, that was infinitely helpful, and it was really alien to me at the time. That was sort of my very earliest internet interaction, besides a few toy forums, So yeah, wow.
Because you went on to sort of then create your own website and your own forums and that kind of thing, right?
Yes. Where I was so involved in the fan community at that point that I said a lot of things I shouldn't say. I was too forthright and honest about things, and probably should have left a few things behind the curtain. And, you know, like, I probably let the fans, ultimately, I hate to say it, but I think I let the fans influence me a little bit too much, too. And, you know, there's a lot of differing opinions about G.I. Joe, so there's a lot of directions you can be pulled in. And I tried to please everyone because I felt like I had to answer to everyone every day because I kept going back to the internet, and they were all there.
Yeah, and the loudest fans aren't necessarily going to be the ones with the greatest ideas, always.
Yeah.
Now, quick question. I kind of missed this in Mark's intro biography. How long did your run go, Brandon? You didn't go to the very end of the series, did you? You weren't the final writer.
No, I wasn't the final writer. So I did these 4 issues. They had me come back and do some dialogue rewrites on, I think, issue 17, which was written by a couple of writers from Friends.
Oh, wow.
And then I got the gig for the regular series, which went 23 to 43 and wrapped up very suddenly. They told me it was ending, and it just ended. And then Joe Casey, I think, I don't remember if Joe Casey was the final writer.
He was the next one when they got
Yeah.
rebooted as
Okay.
America's Elite.
Yeah, so I was the final writer of the original Devils Do run.
But it sounds like you didn't maybe get to finish it up the way you wanted.
Oh, no. That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get to
Or
that
2.
episode when we get to it.
All right, so I want to jump back to you have these 2 scripts for what becomes 11 and 12. You're maybe not gonna hear back from Devils Due for 2 months, and the main book is chugging along, right? If you sent that letter of inquiry around issue 3, it took you 4 months to write. Frontline sort of starting publishing is still a little ways off. So they contacted you, and then it became 4 issues, and then it became weekly.
Yeah, so they contacted me, I think, probably about 3 months later. Again, I don't remember the timelines very well, but they contacted me, and by this point, I had taken a job. I was a landscaper. My friend owned a landscaping company, and I was the single worst landscaper you've ever seen in your life. But they all knew that I was the boss's friend, and so they were all nice to me. So I'm doing that, and they call me and they're like, okay, we're going to get going on production on your issues, and we're way ahead right now. So that's great. And we got into a story meeting. It was me and Josh Blaylock and maybe an editor. And Josh goes, so what happens in the other 2 issues? and I said, the what? And he goes, it's 4 parts, right? And of course I'm smart enough to go, yes, it is. It sure is. And I said, well, I have some ideas, and I'll go, I hadn't scripted those yet, but I'll go and write an outline and let me know what you think. And so I just kind of immediately spouted off all these things that were going to happen that I had not conceived of, because I literally thought this was a 2-part story, which is why there's such a break between the 2. Like, how it seems like 2 episodes of a TV show split into 2 parts. That's because it's kind of exactly what that was. And so, yeah, I went off and I wrote these other 2 issues very quickly. And because they were way ahead, they'd been stockpiling. They had Dan and I. Who was between Dan and I? Who wrote 9 and 10?
That was the Sean McKeever 2-part.
Yes. Okay. So they had that, and they had the opening storyline, and so they decided, because they were so ahead, that they could do a little stunt with my release and go weekly, which I thought was super cool.
Did you ever interact with Eddie Barros, the penciler of this arc?
I think we may have had a couple of emails back and forth, but not any kind of line of communication the way that I would find later to be sort of the traditional approach. We didn't talk much at all because they were kind of managing that situation.
And that story meeting with Devils Due, that's over the phone.
Yes.
When did you first go to Devils Due, or maybe, 2 questions. When did you first go to Chicago and meet them in person?
Never did.
Oh, wow. Okay, then second question, conventions?
Yep. Yeah. My very first out of town convention was Wizard World Philly. And I can tell you exactly when that was because as my plane was landing, I got a text from Josh Blaylock who said Master and Apprentice #1 just became the first sellout issue. We sold out.
Okay. So you wrote you did a lot of writing for them before you met them in person.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
I mean, we had a ton of phone meetings and stuff. I've actually spent very little time with them. I mean, like I've run into Josh in San Diego a few times. We were in Philly together. We all did a big convention over July 4th weekend at Disney World one year. Larry was there for that. That was a big G.I. Joe convention. But yeah, I know. I never met them for a good part of the first days of this.
Were there rewrites in the first 2 issues that or in the story? Did you do any rewriting, revising?
Not much. Honestly, I was kind of spoiled out of the gate on this one because what you see in those 4 issues is pretty much what I wrote. I don't remember any big revisions at all, and I don't even remember going back and changing anything of my own writing, of my own volition. There was the swap out for Bullhorn, which didn't really, affect the story one way or the other. But other than that, I mean, what you see is sort of what I gave.
Wow. I guess surprising, but probably for you as well. Be like,
yeah.
well, this is my first time, right?
Writing comics is easy.
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, let's be very, very clear. I assumed that the story of my life would go, hey, I got to do this one time, and that's it. And you have to be happy with that. I literally thought I got to write a comic one time, and it happened to be G.I. Joe, and I'm just going to go right back to landscaping, and that's good enough. That's, hey, I got to do that. And that's a cool thing that I can tell someone 10 years from now. And obviously it worked out a little better than that. But yeah, I really thought that this was just one lucky little break. Just the way Wizard Magazine sold it. They, you mentioned this earlier, I think, Mark, is that like Wizard Magazine put out an article that basically described me as Charlie with the golden ticket, right? Like, oh, I get to go to the chocolate factory. And like, it wasn't writer gets job, right? It was like lucky fan gets a chance to live his dream. Yeah, like I read it and I was just like, I'm in Wizard Magazine, and they said, oh, that I'm a contest winner. Cool.
Kind of like me saying this was much better than the Snake Eyes movie. Sorry, Brandon. It seems to be a pattern.
It's okay. I'm used to it by now.
And so you've got the 4 issues in and sort of scheduled, and it's going to be a big weekly event with some fanfare behind it. At what point did you find out that you might be in the running to go up in the big glass elevator and actually take on the main book?
Let's see. So the 4 issues came out. Obviously, that happened very quickly, all in the span of the same month. And then pretty quickly thereafter, they asked me to do the dialogue rewrites on 17, which one part of the script literally said, Snake Eyes says. Nice. Yeah. So they asked me to do that, and then I sort of was just, at this point, I'm like, well, they like me. I'll just poke around and see if there's anything else for me to do, and sort of stay in touch. And Josh called me one night, and he goes, listen, I want you to know, and I thought this was the letdown call, right? Like, this is totally, he said, I want you to know that I'm going to be handing off the main book to someone. And I'm just going to be super honest with you. It's between you and another writer. So I'm asking you both for outlines and, tell me what you do with the book. And I said, who's the other writer? And he goes, Dan Jolly. And I go, okay. and I was a big fan of Dan's. So I sent off my outline, and I decided what better time to be friends with someone than with Dan Jolly. I know he already told you this story. So I literally wrote him, and I'm like, hey, we're both up for G.I. Joe. Like, we should be friends. I didn't realize that's not how humans generally work. And, to my eternal surprise, he was agreeable, regardless of what he might have been saying under his breath when he read that email. Because I'm sure it seemed weird. Like, are you coming for me, dude? Like, hey, I hear up for the same job. You want to be friends? But and we're friends to this day. I literally just spoke to him last week. And so he didn't get the gig, but he did okay. Obviously, things turned out okay for Dan. I ended up with that gig. A gig that I was literally digging a ditch when I got the call for. So, again, I was sure that my life was going to be very normal, except for one little blip of comic writing.
When your 4 issues of Frontline came out, did you have a sense of how well they sold? You were on the forums, so you heard what people thought. Did you do a signing at your local comic shop, the lucky contest winner?
I did. Yes, yeah, I did. There was a little comic shop. I lived in Seattle by now, and so there's a little comic shop in Renton that I went and had my very first signing at. It's no longer there, but they had me out twice in the same month. I think we did a thing because they came out every week, and then I got a good local show that no one came to. I want you to imagine, I mean, you read other comics, right? You know other people in comics, right?
Yes.
We're seeing other comics.
Okay, great. So
Mark makes jingles for other people.
Imagine this room, and take me out of the equation because I am then and remain nobody, but I'm in a room with my 4 comics, and I am with Kurt Busiek, Mark Waid, and Gail Simone.
Oh, no pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, they've written more than 4 comics between them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And now imagine that I'm in a room with those people, and I'm like, oh my God. Wow. I am. This is amazing. And then we don't have a single customer for 90 minutes.
Oh,
no one enters the room for 90 minutes, and then when somebody does, we don't see another person for another 30.
Oh my gosh.
It was a show that just did not, sometimes a small comic show just doesn't happen, and this one didn't happen in the most unhappening way. It just I think Mark fell asleep at one point. This is not a joke. I think I seem to recall looking over and seeing Mark napping. It's just good times. Wow. real good times.
You were on the Devils Do forums when these issues were coming out. Were people saying what they thought of them? Were you how was that?
From what I can remember, I mean, the reception was generally good. There was one very prominent fan who did hate and still hates me to this day. And loves to tell me that I am not Larry, and he loves to be a real expert on what Larry would do, and would dissect every line of every page. Larry would have done this. Okay, cool.
So you've met Tim before.
Oh!
Jay, I was just going to spend a few minutes on this episode complaining about the coloring on
I actually thought the coloring was good in a lot of spots.
On page 20 and 21 of issue 13.
Sure, yeah.
That's my gripe for this, this arc.
It was gratifying, and I felt like I was overall greeted very warmly, and I let it immediately go to my head, I was constantly looking at sales figures and charts and everything. I wanted to know how well I was doing.
Do you have a mantle or a shelf with these issues, or a wall with these issues framed, or the very skinny graphic novel collection of these 4 issues on a victory shelf of your oeuvre, your personal comics oeuvre?
Because I'm terrible at organizing things, I actually used all of my personal comic collection of my own works. I mixed them up with my sales box, and I literally sold every copy of every book I've ever written. I have 4 Vampirella trade paperbacks, and I'm slowly rebuilding a collection of my own material because I lost it over the years and I didn't think to keep it. I was saying to Mark before the show, like I don't have this history repeating arc in a physical form, and it's hard to get your hands on. And Snake Eyes Declassified hardcover goes for like $1,000 on Amazon now. So, like, the problem with your books being out of print is that you have to buy them just like everybody else, and if they're not available, they're not available. But I don't even have PDFs or anything of most of this stuff.
Wow.
Well, maybe one of the 3 people on this podcast can mail you these 4 comics that he's holding when the show's over, because he lives near a post office. If you share your mailing address,
I was just gonna say watch the YouTube video.
Sure, it's quicker.
Well, I don't know.
No, probably not.
So, Devils Do sent you comps. You got like free author copies, and those were the ones that you sold down to your last copy. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so crazy.
And I did just by pure accident, just mixing up, books.
I thought it was going to be like, oh, I've moved so many times and I've lost boxes, or there was a flood in the basement. But no, you just sold them.
Yeah. For drugs.
Okay.
For drugs, of course.
Okay.
That's
right.
okay then.
Ibuprofen.
Actually, that makes sense, because it sounds like no. It's guys. You did the interview 20 minutes ago, just like me. Brandon gave up on the Joe figures around the time of Star Brigade. He wasn't exposed to DEF, so he didn't get those lessons.
Yeah, and that would explain why he can't remember any of this stuff either.
No, it's all
and now we know.
coming together.
Too many pharmaceuticals, Keith Richards.
Let's talk about this story.
G.I. Joe. So, at what point did you join as co-writer for 23 to 25? Did you know that you were going to pick up the book as the main writer at that point? And what was the co-writing experience like? Was it that you were handed a plot and you had to flesh it out and script it?
Yes. So I did know. It was sort of a thing where Josh was like, okay, yes, you're going to be the new writer, and I want you to help me out on my last arc, and we'll leave some room for you to put some stuff in, but I could just, use the help, because Devils Do was really hopping at that point. So yeah, he had... basically, as I recall, he had the whole thing more or less plotted out. Like, this is what happens in every issue, but there was some empty space. A lot of the mechanics of the assault and the battle were sort of left to me. I can't take any credit for the best scene, of course, which is Cobra Commander kicking Serpentor off that waterfall. I can't take credit for that, and I desperately want to. But that was one of those things where I read and I was just like, go on, Josh, go on. That's good work. Oh, you're missing the most important DNA. Punt. That was great. But the Xandar stuff is mine because I was planting seeds for what I wanted to do with Xandar later, right? So, it was definitely his story, and then I got to come in and fill in a lot of the blanks. And unfortunately, I also was the one who had to write the scenes where we kill all these characters, including poor Chuckles.
Yeah, so
That was
reading
my
this
question,
arc, reading this arc in conjunction with those few issues, what's striking is that for the first time in many years in this arc, we get a bit of screen time for Flash and Chuckles. And then the next time we see them, they're either getting blown up or having a fist put through their chest. What's up with that, Brandon?
Listen, Hasbro gave us a list. They said, you can kill these characters.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think they said kill these characters. I think they said you can. And
that's the Expendables list.
And Josh wanted the story to have some impact and some cost. We had to do that.
See, I always
and-
say to
yeah.
my employees when they're handing in their expenses, this is a ceiling, not a target.
Do you understand how hard it is to tastefully kill off a character named Skidmark? Do you understand? Like, there's only so much you can do, so I dropped a helicopter on him. I thought that was the best way he could possibly go.
Just left as a smear on the ground, ironically.
That's right. So yeah, it was very hard to kill off Flash and Chuckles, especially because they are legitimately two of my favorite characters. Flash was my first G.I. Joe.
You did it to yourself, man. Oh, dear.
I know.
All right, well, that answers that question.
I see it now.
Cool. I think we're ready to get properly into these issues. I think I'm feeling a little bit heady. I think I need to open up a window or something. But
I think we've been getting into some issues.
Warning team, as the sands of time descend, temporal disruption has set in, and it is here that we must leave our brave adventurers, Mark, Tim, Jay, and Brandon. Remain patient, and we will pick up where we leave them in part 2 of our chat with writer Brandon Jerwa, as we dig into the detail of his Frontline arc, History Repeating. Join us then, if you dare.